Hello, and welcome back to Literary Encounters. I'm Lena, and I'm here with my co host David. Today we're diving into Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie's acclaimed novel, Americanah. This is such a rich, multi layered story that deals with race, identity, immigration, and love. There's just so much to unpack. David, Americanah feels like a book that's more relevant than ever, don't you think?
Absolutely, Lena. Americana is a novel that tackles so many important issues in such a thoughtful and nuanced way. It follows the journey of Ifemelu, a Nigerian woman who moves to the United States and becomes a blogger, writing about race from the perspective of a non-American Black. What makes Americana so compelling is how Adichie explores the intersections of identity, race, and culture, both in Nigeria and in America. It's a story about belonging, about how we see ourselves and how others see us. And it's framed through Ifemelu's experiences as an immigrant navigating these two very different worlds.
Exactly. And Ifemelu is such a dynamic protagonist. She's smart, insightful, and unapologetically honest, especially when it comes to her observations about race in America. Her blog, where she writes about her experiences as a Black woman in the U.S., is a powerful lens through which Adichie critiques the nuances of race in America. Ifemelu's perspective as a Nigerian living in the U.S. brings a fresh outsider's view to the conversation about race, especially the distinction she makes between being Black in America and being African in America.
Yes, and I think that's one of the most important aspects of the novel. Ifemelu's experience in America shows her that race is not just a matter of skin color, it's about history, culture, and the ways in which society is structured. Back in Nigeria, race wasn't something she had to think about as much. But in America, she becomes hyper-aware of her Blackness, and she learns that being African and being African-American are two very different experiences. Through her blog posts, Adichie dissects everything from microaggressions to cultural appropriation, making readers think deeply about the ways race is discussed and experienced.
Right? Ifemelu's blog posts are such a brilliant narrative device because they allow her to reflect on the complexities of race in a way that feels both personal and political. They're sharp, witty, and at times uncomfortable, but they force the reader to confront issues of race head-on. One of my favorite parts is how Ifemelu talks about the hierarchy of foreignness, where she discusses how immigrants are perceived in the U.S. based on their origin. For example, she notes how African immigrants are often seen differently from African Americans or Caribbean immigrants. Adichie is so good at peeling back these layers to show that race and identity are not monolithic. They're incredibly nuanced.
That's a great point, Lena. The novel does a fantastic job of highlighting the different experiences of Blackness depending on cultural background and context. Ifemelu's observations about how she's perceived in America, both by white Americans and African Americans, bring to light how identity can shift depending on where you are. In Nigeria, she was part of the majority, but in America, she becomes part of a racial minority, and her struggle to navigate these two identities is central to the story, especially when she returns to Nigeria and realizes that she's changed in ways that make her feel like a foreigner in her own country.
Yes, and that's where the idea of being a non-American Black really comes into play. Ifemelu grapples with the fact that she has to learn what it means to be Black in America, something she didn't fully understand before arriving in the U.S. And then when she returns to Nigeria after years of living abroad, she faces a different kind of identity crisis. The term Americanah is used by Nigerians to describe someone who has been abroad and comes back with a mix of foreign habits and attitudes. Ifemelu's return to Nigeria is fraught with tension because she's no longer the same person she was when she left, and yet she doesn't quite fit into the American identity either.
That's one of the things I found so compelling about the novel, how it explores the idea of home and belonging. Ifemelu's return to Nigeria after living in the U.S. for several years raises important questions about identity. Has she changed too much to fit back into Nigerian society, or is she simply seeing her homeland with new eyes? This idea of not fully belonging in either place, America or Nigeria, is a recurring theme in the book. Adichie shows how immigration can leave you feeling suspended between two worlds, never fully rooted in one place.
Absolutely, David. And then there's the story of Obinze, Ifemelu's first love, who stays in Nigeria but has his own experience with immigration when he tries to build a life in the UK. His journey is quite different from Ifemelu's, but it mirrors her experience in some ways. While Ifemelu's story is about navigating race and identity in America, Obinze's is about the harsh realities of immigration in Europe. His struggles in the UK, where he faces rejection and exploitation, highlight the universal challenges faced by immigrants, regardless of where they go. Adichie uses both characters to explore different facets of the immigrant experience, and it's heartbreaking to see how their paths diverge but still remain connected by their shared history.
Yes, and Obinze's storyline really highlights the broader themes of displacement and the search for identity. While Ifemelu's journey is more about self-discovery in America, Obinze's experience is about survival. His time in the UK shows the darker side of immigration, the sense of invisibility, the constant fear of deportation, and the exploitation of undocumented immigrants. Adichie makes it clear that the immigrant experience is not monolithic. For every Ifemelu who finds a voice in America, there's an Obinze who struggles to even get his foot in the door.
That's so true. And while Americanah deals with these serious issues, it's also a deeply personal story about love, especially the relationship between Ifemelu and Obinze. Their romance is central to the novel, and despite all the changes they go through, their connection remains strong. I love how Adichie weaves together the personal and political in this novel. Ifemelu and Obinze's love story isn't just about two people. It's also about the impact of migration, distance, and cultural shifts on relationships. Their love evolves and adapts as they both grow and change through their experiences abroad and at home.
Yes, their relationship is so central to the novel's emotional core. Ifemelu and Obinze are both shaped by their experiences in different countries, but they never lose their bond. Adichie portrays their relationship as deeply complex. It's about timing, personal growth, and the longing for connection despite being physically and emotionally distant for so long. When they reconnect later in the novel, it's not just about rekindling a romance, but also about finding a sense of belonging with each other after feeling so displaced in their own lives. It's beautiful how their love is both an anchor and a reflection of their individual journeys.
Exactly. The novel ends on a note of ambiguity, leaving us to wonder what the future holds for Ifemelu and Obinze. But I think that's fitting because Americanah isn't just about closure or resolution. It's about the ongoing process of figuring out who you are, where you belong, and how love fits into that equation. It's a story that asks big questions about race, immigration, and identity, but it's also a story about human connection and the desire to find your place in the world.
I completely agree, Lena. Americanah is such a layered novel, and Adichie's ability to blend personal stories with broader social commentary is what makes it such a powerful read. Whether it's Ifemelu's sharp insights on race, Obinze's immigration struggles, or their shared love story, the novel offers so much to think about. It's one of those books that stays with you long after you've finished reading.
Absolutely. If you haven't read Americanah yet, we highly recommend it. It's a novel that offers rich insights into race, identity, love, and belonging, issues that are just as relevant today as they were when the book was first published. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Literary Encounters. If you enjoyed our discussion, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and share it with your friends.
Yes, thank you so much for tuning in, and as always, we'd love to hear your thoughts on the book. How did you relate to Ifemelu and Obinze's journeys? What are your thoughts on how Adichie tackles race and identity in the novel? Let us know.
Until next time, keep reading, keep reflecting, and remember, sometimes finding yourself means embracing the complexities of where you come from and where you're going. Goodbye for now.